What's up, everybody, and welcome back into the Play the Fight Song College Football Show. A big episode tonight. Honestly, it was a little bit of a disappointing first day of the portal being open, I would say. I think a lot of people are putting a lot of pressure on media personalities that kind of blew this up. We got some late additions that made it more interesting, but it's going to be a huge week in college football over the next couple of weeks, which we're going to dive everything into later. Let's talk to all the guys who are all here. What a blessing. Let's go to Reese first. Late join, Ohio State hat. Reese, we ready to break down the spring transfer portal tonight?
Yeah, like you were talking about, not a lot of crazy names. I thought there'd be more of them that I know. I only recognize about 3 or 4 of them, but you guys know all of them because you're a little more sickos than me. But yeah, ready to get into them.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We got to break down a couple big names. I think there's 2 that really stood out to me, and there's probably the 2 that you were thinking of, Reese. Jake, you ready to go a little bit deeper in and maybe give some predictions on who else you think might jump?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest names so far, I feel like, have came out days prior, like through leaks and rumors. But I mean, it's still early. There's still teams that have yet to even have their spring game, which could impact some kids and where they see themselves on the rosters. So I'm still wait and see. I don't think it's too boring of a day yet. Like one of Houston's top receivers literally just left like a minute ago. So if you go to 247 like I have and click refresh like every 5 minutes, a new guy pops up. It's actually insane.
Yeah, it's so weird now that this is the college football landscape that we're kind of in. JP, I'll go to you. Last guy, transfer additions. We'll give you a Hawks perspective on it. What are you looking for on the Iowa side? Would you like to see some additions? Are you scared of anybody jumping other than Proctor? He's in a lot of news today.
I think Iowa will try to add somebody, but I don't think it's going to ever be a big piece, especially this late. Even the guys we added last year in the spring window were looked at like, oh, well, they weren't here all this spring and the last fall, so like, they're not getting the same handshake everybody else is. But it'll be interesting to see who kind of moves on after spring ball is up for the Hawks, but I can't imagine it's going to be anything crazy. I like most of their guys are veteran, been there for 2 or 3 years. It'd be astonishing if one of them left.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we'll go into later, but you had mentioned that it's hard for these guys to come in late and make an immediate impact. Like, you got to think that these guys are learning playbooks that are going to find new homes even later than like early high school enrollees. Like, they've got a lot to learn in a little time and a dead period to do so. So it's tough on them. So we'll see what happens with all the transfer portal, but we're going to dive into the names that are already in. I'm sure there'll be some as we're recording that'll jump in. Maybe we can drop them live. But the schedule tonight, we're going to take you through some recent news. Then we're going to go through the names to know, or the names that we know in the portal. And then we're going to kind of talk you through how to handle being a fan of college football and handling maybe your team losing guys, gaining guys, and maybe what you should think. But let's dive into it first. Let's go into recent news. Not a ton of recent news. We'll lead it off with the FCS championship game. It's going to move to a Monday night, which I know JP is the all-time biggest hater of this move when it comes to basketball and FBS football. So, JP, I'll let you open it up. What do you think on this?
It's dumb. Like, they had a Saturday to themselves, did they not? They were early.
No, they were Sunday. Sunday, remember?
Were they always Sunday? I cannot remember. I feel like there was one year they were a Saturday morning at like 11 or something. I can't remember.
It's definitely been Sunday the last 2 or 3 days or 3 years.
The Sunday thing is fine, I guess. At least it's a weekend, right, for those guys that get to travel down, because I feel like they do a pretty good job in Frisco of getting teams down there. And a lot of the times those are northern states, so your North Dakotas, your South Dakotas, your Montanas. Texas has been shown up in that national title a couple times. Not the University of Texas, obviously, but like Sam Houston's and things like that. James Madison's have been down there. But putting it on Monday, I feel like people come home, right, and they're not ready to watch that. I think like, oh, it might be on, or they're going to watch the regular scheduled Monday programming. So taking this out of a spot where it kind of sits by itself hurts it. And Monday night's just disgusting. Cowboy,
we'll give you a break. I was trying to hold my giggles.
Cowboy's pissed about
it.
He's not happy about it.
Yeah, he's whining. He's whining over there. He doesn't like it either. Jake, I'll go to you on this. Go ahead, JP. I'll let you finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say he can't watch either, so he's pissed off. But like the Monday night, and then it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30. We're kicking off, or tipping off at that time. It's a little ridiculous. You're giving these people, instead of giving them time to celebrate and enjoy the weekend around it and make this a big event for, most people that are watching it. It's like it just kind of becomes another night, another thing, and maybe we'll get to the end of this one.
Jake, what about you? You mad about this move, or do you care? FCS football, is it kind of in the background?
I should be better at paying more attention to the FCS game. I don't think I've really even with South Dakota State being in it the last couple of years, being a more regional team, I haven't watched the game through and through, to be quite honest with you. I would be frustrated if I were a South Dakota State fan or an FCS fan. I know people obviously living up there, people who traveled down to those national championship games for a couple of years. And obviously I think a Sunday is a lot better. And just to be able to travel back on Monday, maybe you go down on Thursday or Friday or wherever it is. I don't really get the whole point of it. Maybe it's to stay away from the NFL window, just like the national championship at the FBS level. They don't want to play it on Saturday because the NFL starts playing their games on Saturdays in the regular season in January. It doesn't really make sense to me, because I think it was Pate who made a really good point on his podcast once. The niche groups of college football watchers, they don't care if the NFL is on a Saturday in January. If a big college football game is on, vice versa for FCS fans, you're either going to watch it or you're not. On a Monday night, maybe you'll get a couple of random tune-ins, but again, we're just doing this for a couple of extra more views. And really, what does that matter? I think you're going to lose a bigger in-game audience, which is what really makes the game, right? So that's, I think, the most important thing. You're just doing it for a couple of extra TV ratings.
And we can make the Saturday work even if the NFL is on. We can play those NFL games at noon and 3:30 and kick this national title off at 7 o'clock. Nobody's going to blink at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. They'll blink at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. on a Monday or Sunday.
What's crazy to me too is that modern America, or the NCAA, doesn't act like 80% of Americans have at least 2 TVs from the months of September to January. We're always going to find a way to throw both of them on. I genuinely don't think it'll hurt ratings either way.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I never thought of it like that, but I mean, I don't know anybody who's a diehard football fan that doesn't have a second TV on Saturdays, even in week 4, let alone playoff.
Well, if the NFL wants to own Sundays, they own Sunday, whatever. Let's blow up a little bit. Let's own Saturdays. That's our window. It's been this window for a long time.
Yep.
We have a legitimate fan base that's only growing. This is you're getting your expanded playoff now where you're getting more teams in it. You're telling me that we're going to play all these playoff games on Friday or Saturday or whatever, and then we're like, actually, you know what? Monday night we'll play the national title just because we're scared of the NFL. You're telling me you're not scared? I don't know. I feel like that's our day. That's when it happens.
Women's college basketball, I know it's not even really apples to apples right now, especially with the star power, but women's college basketball got 18 million views on a Sunday last week. So, I mean, it's definitely possible.
I think a point we failed to mention, it's getting bigger. The sport, I don't think they're realizing, the ratings are always going to go up. The sport's growing. We just talked about it a few weeks ago in our recent news. You're going to see increases, especially with the bigger games that you're creating. But I think this is another prime example of that group of decision makers changing shit that does not need to be changed. They're just bored at this point. We need the season to start. So maybe they start worrying about other things rather than changing things they don't need to. So we'll leave it at that. But all right, let's move on to the Michigan Wolverines. Your defending national champion faced a little bit of sanctions today. I mean, not for what you think that they would face, but this one goes all the way back to the COVID-19 dead period, and they got sanctioned, and we'll go through them here. But 5 former staffers and Jim Harbaugh included in this, sanctioned by the NCAA today. They came to terms for these sanctions. They had 4 level 2 violations during that COVID-19 dead period. Harbaugh was texting recruits, was one of them, viewing workouts via Zoom, and that was more of the other assistants and the analysts performing coaching on site during the COVID-19 dead period. So those were their recruiting infractions or NCAA infractions that they got the following punishment for: 3 years of probation. The school received fines and recruiting stipulations / I mean, what's the best word here to use? They're going to basically get held back a little bit in recruiting.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you're going to get. You're going to be able to hold Michigan back, but that's the gist of kind of what they're facing is that 3 years probation, those fines, which I'm sure they'll pay no problem. But that leaves the question, kind of, what do you guys think on this? I mean, we finally get an answer from one of the allegations towards Michigan,
yeah.
but JP, what do you think?
I bet most people forgot about this was the original allegations against Michigan is they're COVID recruiting, and then it kind of went away, and then they got better during 21, and then they got better in 22, and then 23 came around, and then everything with the Spygate or whatever. What are we calling that? I don't know. Whatever the word is
Doesn't
for
matter.
that scandal. Yeah.
Cheaters.
And then they win a national title, and everybody seems to forget that these were going on. These are the ones that are basically being handed down because of the medical outcome of COVID and all that stuff. So this one's not like cheating, or I mean, you call it cheating, I guess. It's not really. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but that's how long it takes the NCAA to get to things. It's been 4 years, 4 years since these things were happening in real time, and we're just now giving them level 2 violations and a slap on the wrist. It's like, that's a reason that we need somebody else governing the sport.
Yeah, I don't know why you would need this much time to break these things down. And 2 of them, I think, would be like more of a shining spot for handling COVID-19. Like, you're texting recruits instead of visiting them, and then you're watching workouts via Zoom. Like, there's not saying you can coach. Like, being on site and coaching, that's one thing. Definitely a big no-no during the time that this was held. But the other 2, I'm like, shouldn't they like probably give them maybe a reward? It sounds pretty good to me. But Jake, what do you think? You think this is enough, or does it really matter?
No, it doesn't really matter. But I wonder how many people who retweeted or saw the tweet today. I think it was from the NCAA that just said, like, what did it say? Michigan is under allegations or something like that. Like, it was just that. I wonder if half the people that read that had thought it had anything to do with this and not the cheating allegations. Did they even take the time to read it or check into it at all? I really think that's how relevant it is, because it's just not. And it took this long for them to figure this out. Is this just like, okay,
Well,
here's their punishment, let's just move on?
Good
I'm
news
ready to move on.
if they ever come down to like the spying thing in 2028, right? Maybe they'll get another slap on the wrist and they'll have a different head coach around then. And then these guys that are at school now won't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, they won't.
Vacate
I
the
mean,
trophy.
that's the only thing that I think, Reese. That's a great point. And I'll go to you last because you're
Get
the
'em
biggest
out.
Michigan hater. Yeah. All right.
Vacate the
what do you
trophy.
think?
You recruited those players that just won you national title, and those allegations. Come on, illegal. Get them out.
I mean,
Reese
He-
is the
he's embracing
fun
the Ohio
police.
State. He's also
Yeah.
embracing the Ohio State cap. It's really just
Yeah.
I like this hat.
through.
I like this hat. It's a cool hat.
Yeah, we got a new audience. The Ohio State fans are rolling in. Reese got an Ohio State cap on,
out.
just shitting on Michigan. Kid's fitting in just fine. But all right, let's go to the next point, and that is a little bit of the introductory part of the transfer portal. We're not going to go name by name here, but we're just going to say, hey, welcome in. This is portal season again, reopening. Here are the details on what you need to know. If you're not familiar about this period, it opened today being Tuesday, April 16th. It will close April 30th. You have all the way through April 30th to make your move. And of May 1st, it is officially closed. You are stuck where you're at. So there's going to be a lot of moves here. This was originally planned to open May 1st by the NCAA. That was going to be the day it opened, which then 15 days after that, they'd have transfer. They decided that's too late, moved it up in the schedule right around these spring games when these kids are making these decisions. And we'll see how it goes. But there's one big point I want to add on, and this could be a recruiting favor for some schools, and it could potentially impact some decisions for kids, and that is high school kids, because these teams are also allowed to host recruits on visits throughout this window. This is normally a quote-unquote dead period for recruiting of high school kids. It's not. With the transfer portal being open and they're hosting recruits, they're also allowing high school recruits on campus during a normal dead period. So you'll see more moves even from high school kids during this time as well. Any opening remarks on the portal? Do you like this time frame? That's what I'll describe it as. Do you like this time frame, Jake?
2 remarks. Number 1, I love how the NCAA thought that May was too late, and they're like, actually, we should move it back so we have the portal for basketball open the same time as the portal for football. What a great idea that sounds. Everybody, let's vote on that. Second thought, JP mentioned this last week, and it's actually a really good point. I think we should touch on it again, is the SEC rule for the spring window. SEC cannot receive portal additions within conference. So, I mean, we're kind of seeing it a little bit. Look for SEC schools to go to the Big 10, the Big 12, ACC schools and try to get those Power 5 players from there because they can't take their guys within conference in this window. So
a lot to look out for. JP, do you like the time frame? Do you think it should have been May? Do you think it should be another window at all? What do you think?
Later would be worse. I feel like, I don't know. Like, what do these kids get out of like waiting a couple more weeks to say they're going in after spring ball is done, right? Like, then they're going to get their workouts in personally. They're not going to go into the team room or anything. Like, but you are taking reps away from kids that are staying at the school. But these kids that would be leaving are taking, time in the weight room, effort from coaches, things like that, just to get more workouts in before they say they're leaving. So it is what it is. The 2-window thing is kind of crazy to me. I'm not a big fan of it. As we know, the college football schedule is a little disgusting and it needs some work.
It makes it tough. All right. The last point we have on here is we talked about him last week, so we're not going to deep dive into him when we go through the players to know. But Damian Martinez, the Oregon State running back, very good player, still out there. On3 has reported today that Miami is the landing spot, the potential landing spot that they see him going. Crystal ball, whatever you want to call it, is to Miami for Damian Martinez. So
crystal ball to crystal ball.
Yeah, that's
JP's waiting all day for that one.
Yeah,
I promise that just came to me.
Wow, he's a
Zinger.
Witty individual. That works.
Yep.
That worked though. All right,
it was quick. It was witty.
Nice job,
funny.
Jordan.
Good. I did enjoy it. All right, let's go to the main point of tonight's episode. That's all we have for recent news, and we are going to dive in to the names to know and the names that we know of that are in the portal right now. And maybe you don't know who they are, so we'll tell you a little bit about them. Let's lead it off with Penny Boone, the former Toledo running back, former MAC Offensive Player of the Year, transferred to Louisville. He is back in the portal. Let's go one by one, and we'll just say kind of your thoughts if you like Penny Boone's style of play, where you could see him ending up if you have a guess, or maybe a team that needs that backfield player. JP, Penny Boone, talk a little bit about him.
To me, if you're jumping in the portal with these accolades and then committing somewhere, then leaving after spring ball, your playing chances at that school probably weren't as high as you thought they were. So that's where I'm at on that one. Kid's talented. He had a breakout year last year. I think he's only got 1 or 2 more maximum years left. I can't remember exactly where he's at. I think he's going to be a solid lower Power 5, Group of 5 back. But he's talented, right? And I just think that shows more that Louisville's got some depth in the running back room that he maybe didn't want to compete with, or was told that he didn't have to.
Right. Jake Brees, do you have any ideas of where you could see this fit? Total guess, Jake?
Where I'd see him, I don't know. A couple of questions kind of raised when he goes into the portal. But first of all, he's not the only guy from Louisville that's jumped in, and we're going to touch on a couple more. There's at least 6 guys that I don't know if have officially entered, but Louisville is one of those teams that has lost a lot of guys right now. So you kind of speculate, like, is there just some coaching issues? Is there like people just have discrepancies with what's going on? We know like Satterfield's a guy who is going to use the portal heavily. He did last year.
Who?
So did I get that? What did I say?
Jeff Brom?
Oh yeah.
You
Sorry.
said Scott Satterfield?
Satterfield. back a couple of years ago. Yeah. Brom used the portal a ton last year. So maybe it's just one of those things where he's going to replace all of these guys again in a couple of weeks. So
Louisville is crazy with these transfers, man. They had so many come out and so many come in. It was absolutely insane. I think the number was 23 they had depart in the first window. So I don't know if that tells you anything about their program, but I do want to go backwards. Terrible hosting. I do want to talk about a little bit more on the general transfer portal before we go into some players that are maybe bigger names. But as a Nebraska fan, everybody knows that. I listened to Matt Rule's weekly press conferences, and he brought something up today that raised an eyebrow to most of the college football world. JP, let's roll the clip and listen to what he had to say.
I mean, I think if anybody on our team wants to go in the portal, it's open today. That's their right. Obviously no one has yet. I don't anticipate anybody going in. When we get done with spring, we'll have a couple days to see if something's best for them. Our guys are really transparent. We've had players on our team already have people from other teams contact them, come in, walk in, say, Coach, look at this, show us a text message, show us this. It's a sad state of college football when, but the problem's not the players. Let me start there. The problem's not the players.
Interesting, right? I mean, you kind of raise an eyebrow at that. He's kind of throwing some shade at coaches of college football, no one in particular, but he says he's got players. I mean, granted, it's open now, so they can reach out. I don't really know the detailed rules of the NCAA, and probably the NCAA doesn't know their own rules. But what do you guys think on this? Do you think the coaches have more to do with the issues that we have with the transfer portal, or like maybe the non-loyalty based players that we're finding, like a Caden Proctor? Do you think the coaches are a bigger issue that are maybe discussed today, JP?
He's not the first one to bring this up. I believe Mac Brown talked about it. With Josh Pate's parents has talked about it.
Norduzzi was pissed about Addison, or was it Addison a couple of years ago?
Yep.
Yeah, he was the original complainer about tampering. And then Mac Brown, Kirk Ferentz has said something about it. I think every coach has said something about it. It started to make you wonder, like, who's Von Hoyer though here? Like, who's actually really playing by the rules? But yeah, coaches are a problem with it if they're reaching out and they're breaking the rules. That before a guy is officially in the portal, you're not supposed to reach out to him in any way, shape, or form. You know, like if a player from your school is doing it to them, if they're doing it on part of the school or as a friend, that's one thing. But if you're doing it as a coach, being like, hey, just wondering, you thinking about jumping in there, or like, hey, just want to talk to you, like that's a little overline. That's one of the big reasons we were skeptical on the window and then opening up and making it free reign. Like, yeah, there's some kids who like probably didn't handle it the best in their transfer, maybe picked the wrong spot, but there's definitely coaches out there trying to take advantage of the money they may have at their disposal, or just trying anything they can to stay afloat and keep a job.
Yeah, Reese, what do you got on this? What's your take?
Say it's tough, but it's also their job. Like when you're at a University of Alabama that has how many coaches on your defensive staff, and you're a lower level guy, like your job is maybe to go look at guys that are looking to go to somewhere else. Like it's tough that, yeah, that whole loyalty thing goes, but it's their jobs. Like, I mean, I can't really knock a guy for trying to improve, because if he's trying to jump up the ranks in his own staff, like if he can become a better recruiter and bring guys in to help out his team, it's just going to help him out in the end too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with it, I think, too.
Well, it's not. I feel like the people that are doing it are the recruiting coordinators, and they know very well that they are not supposed to be doing certain things, right? And so, yeah, like you can't blame them for trying to make their team better, but you can. It's probably a domino effect. It started somewhere and it just kept going. Like people are like, well, this is the only way to get ahead of it. Otherwise, we're just going to get eaten alive out here. And so maybe that's where it is. But no, I mean, like Reese, you're probably right. Like there probably is lower level recruiting guys, or, you know, position coaches or assistant position coaches that are in charge of that stuff. And they're probably being told to do so. I can't imagine they're going out on their whim without approval of head coach, coordinator, assistant coaches being like, hey, like, you know, like, can I reach out to this guy? Should I be? If they are, like, they're going to lose their job in an instant if like the coach finds out and isn't on board with it, right?
It just seems like an easier schedule to follow than it's made out to be. Like, you know, somebody hits the portal, they're announced, their name hits the system in the NCAA, reach out to him then. What do you think is maybe the upper advantage, Jake, maybe to throw that idea into his head? What do you take on this? You think the coaches are an issue?
No, I mean, it's got to be the rule makers, right? Like if they've been getting away with it this far, they're just like JP said, they're just trying to get an edge. They're just trying to do their job and make the team the best they can. Yeah, is it unethical? Of course it is. But that's life, and the best salesmen probably aren't the most ethical people in the world either. So unless it's actually breaking a rule, you know, who's to stop them?
Well,
if
it is
were
breaking
such
a
big
rule.
deal-
It's who is to stop them, though. That's what it is. It's who's going to stop me.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't see other people turning other people in. So obviously it's pretty much happening everywhere, because they're probably looking at themselves and being like, well, we're not necessarily doing it the best way either.
Yeah, and this goes back to what JP said at the beginning of the episode. I mean, we're looking at a 4-year turnaround to get some probation slapped on a team. How long is it going to take before? I mean, this is a very new system, even to the NCAA, the transfer portal.
And why would the kid admit
govern
that? Say the kid gets hit up, a kid from, let's just do Pitt. We were talking about Narduzzi. Let's say the kid from Pitt gets hit up by Alabama, right? And then he picks Alabama, goes there, has a great year or two, but there's still allegations about how he got there and all that stuff. A couple years down the road, why would he then turn in the school that gave him, and probably that coaching staff that gave him a better, you know, situation, gave him better, you know, money in the NFL because a better, you know, draft position? Why would he then do that and scar his name? Because then the fan base is going to hate him, and then the coaching staff is going to be upset, and then the coaching staff in that program are going to go downhill if they do get caught. Like once they're there, your best bet is like Rule saying, and I'm not saying he's wrong. I bet he's very accurate that there are names there that are showing him he's showing them, who's hitting him up or who's texting those players. And those players are probably like, hey, you seeing this? Like, I promise I'm not going anywhere. But like, that's the only way to get somebody is if Rule turns around and he calls the NCAA today and he goes, hey, like here, this, and so is doing that. It's the only way to get them. And then you're telling me that they're not going to have a 7-month to 2-year thing before they even get to that staff to even say anything about it. Like,
right. Yeah.
Show me your
you're
phone,
not
give me your text messages. Like,
you're not going to find a bunch of coaches willing to give that name up anyway. Like, it could be any number, any person. Like, until they get it confirmed, you're not going to get. I mean, we can say it here. We're not going to get a bunch of snitches from the coaches of college football. I will say that. So, all right, let's go back to the names that are in the portal. Sorry, I had to retract there. It's terrible hosting, but we had to get that conversation in because it's a big accusation that many coaches have made. But all right, next to the next name, Jacoby Matthews, the Texas A&M safety, reported to already having been in contact with Oregon and Florida State. That's from Steve Wiltfong. Forgive me if I pronounce your last name wrong, but Steve Wiltfong came out and said that he's talking to Oregon and Florida State. A big safety addition. There's a lot of teams out there that need some secondary help. Oregon, Florida State, those are going to be teams that you're going to see at the top of college football. I believe a former 4-star recruit, number
Correct.
one defensive back in his class in 2022. So what would you think? I mean, whom needs him more? Oregon, Florida State, JP?
I think see Florida State need the DBs a little bit more just with like the turnover from just draft time, right? Like people run out of eligibility, opting to go into the draft. Just give them a little bit more. This is also a kid that anybody in the country would love to have, but I think the big dogs are going to have a chance to bite first here.
Yeah, I think so too. Jake, what about you? You think Oregon, Florida State? You agree with JP?
Well, it would be a pretty good tandem if he paired up with Jabbar Muhammad, another guy that Oregon just got through the portal, but definitely Florida State needs more assurance on the back end. But this has got to be, I would love to know how many guys are left from that. What's it, the 2022 class for Texas A&M for all the 5-stars that they got?
Yeah, you could probably look that
number
up.
one overall, where the initial accusations came in from Saban about, well, look how they're getting those players. I mean, that was the start of this entire storm. So
yeah,
that's a good
how many of
question.
those guys are left? Are any of them left from at least those 4- and 5-star guys?
Shit, they don't even got the same head coach from that class, so probably not many. Reese, I'll beg the question to you that just popped into my head. You're making this decision to go to Florida State or Oregon. Is this kind of where Florida State is in a bad spot, being a part of the ACC and not being in the Big Ten or SEC? Like, you got to think that Oregon's more of a wanted to be in spot with where the direction of college football is going.
I mean, if you're looking to, I think if you go to Florida State, I think you're a better chance to win that conference to get your name in the playoff at the end of the year. I think Oregon just has a tougher road ahead of them to try to win that conference, but I think they're a team that's going to be in that playoff no matter what. So it just depends if you're trying to. Also, I think that Oregon defense is going to be pretty solid too. You just mentioned the Jabbar Muhammad, like that defensive that backfield they're going to have is going to be pretty solid there too. So especially going to the Big Ten, defense is king there. So depends on really kind of where you want to go, because I think he's going to be a guy who wherever he goes, he's going to make an immediate impact, and it's just how can he help others around him, because if he's their strongest asset, he's going to make other guys around him better too. So I don't know. If I was him, it's a tough decision, but it's also like, hey, do you want to go to Eugene, Oregon, or do you want to go to Tallahassee, Florida? So
yeah, that's a fair point to make. That's probably a big part of that decision. I think that's a very big part of that decision as well. But all right, let's go to the next one. Timmy McClain. And you may be, I've heard that name before. Did he play? He played in the Power 5. He played in the Big 12 last year for UCF. He got some pretty good playing time as Reese Plumlee was down. And I'll open it up, and I'm going to we get to show you a play of maybe that McClain made. And I wanted to include this clip because it's also just a funny moment from last year. This is the best call I've ever heard in my life. Like, this was the most exciting call. Listen to his voice crack towards the end of it. JP, roll it.
McClain running out of time. What do you got? McClain! He's still on his feet. Oh my goodness! It's caught! Unbelievable! The game continues! RJ!
So he can make some plays. He made a huge fourth down play and one of the worst, craziest calls I ever heard in my life. I've never heard an announcer legitimately scream like that. Baylor 36-35. And
Disgusting
Baylor
display by
still
UCF in that one.
Oh, so bad. Baylor was not a good team last year. That was just an ugly
No.
game, but he showed some flashes. I mean, you got to have extreme athleticism to make a play like that. So, former USF quarterback turned UCF quarterback, now looking for a new home. And if you're a Florida school, you got to expect he wants to stay down there, around there somewhere. But what do you guys think of McLean potential landing spots? Let's go to Jake first this time.
Yeah, I think this is the consequence of what you're going to see with the spring portal, especially at the quarterback position with a guy who's older now, and he had a one-on-one battle through the spring and didn't win it with KJ Jefferson coming into town. And we'll get to the guy next who lost another position battle, I think. So he's just trying to maximize his efforts. I don't think the Power 5 level is really where he needs to be at this point. Does he stay in the state of Florida? He was at USF where he threw for 1,800 yards. Maybe does he stay in conference, stays within the state? He goes to Florida Atlantic with Tom Herman. That's just a team on the top of my mind if he's
Yep,
if he's
that's what I was
already
thinking
stayed in the state of Florida. So maybe he heads there. I don't know, but I don't anticipate a Power 5 team picking him up.
If he would be by a Power 5, you'd think it would be some sort of backup role, but at this point in your career, you're probably not looking to do so. JP, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I think he'll end up group of 5 somewhere, but in a job and starting and hopefully really uplifting a program that needs a quarterback this late in the cycle.
Yeah, he's not a bad addition at all. Reese, closing thoughts. Timmy McLean, you think Florida Atlantic, or where's he going to go?
I have no idea, man. This is a guy
Call
that
it,
I
man.
really know a whole lot about. Let's see here. Bethune-Cookman. That school's in Florida.
I like that, dude. That'd be
Be a good
crazy.
spot.
Run this back. We're going to clip this back here. When
Heady
it
answer
comes to
right there.
Bethune. He would play, and he'd probably go off in that league. So that's not a terrible
Sixth
call
inning,
at
we've
all.
been there.
But all right, Jake preface just a little bit, but another lost quarterback battle. Let's go down to Jacoby Criswell from Arkansas. This is obviously where KJ Jefferson transferred from. So this is the second quarterback that Arkansas will have transferring in one transfer year. I want to say full year. The KJ leaves back at the end of the fall, and now the spring opens, and here goes his backup. We're going to add to you first, Jake. Talk about this quarterback battle and maybe where you see Criswell fitting. Will he be a Power 5 guy?
Yeah, I don't think so, because this will be his third destination now. He came from North Carolina, I think it was 2 years ago. Took a couple of I think he's played 14 games in his career that I saw. He played a decent amount last year because KJ battled a ton of injury stuff. But again, like, I don't understand. You're losing a position battle to Taylon Green, who came in from Boise State. I would imagine Criswell is going to find himself probably at a Sunbelt school would be something that comes to my mind. I think his Power 5 days might be over unless he has a great year at the G5 level.
I like that. It's a good guess. And maybe a McLeod replacement over at JMU. That's not a bad guess at all. JP, where do you see this fit?
Georgia State's got a history of kids kind of like this that, end up playing a big high-flying offense. I know they had some issues with the portal as well, but Sunbelt, Conference USA, stuff like that. Kid's still talented. I mean, but you lose to KJ, who's been a really good quarterback in the SEC, and then you lose one to Drake May probably when he came in. I mean, sometimes you just get handed a tough deal, man.
Yeah, he's gotten two really, really good quarterbacks in front of him. No doubt about that. Reese, you got to guess a Sunbelt team. You got to throw one out there. Where do you see him fit? Where's this one going?
I'm going Conference USA. I'm saying Western Kentucky.
There you go. The Tops.
Toppers.
A good football team.
The Tops picked up TJ Finley this offseason, didn't they?
Damn. How did you say that, Jacob?
Let's see who wants to go battle it out.
Yeah, in your defense, Reese, we just said that would be following suit in his career. He had Drake May and KJ Jefferson. Might as well throw TJ Finley.
Troy,
Auburn quarterback. Gunnar Watson did graduate. Yes.
Troy. Final answer.
Yeah, that could be that's actually not a bad call at all. They're going to be a good team, and they'll actually be in Iowa City this year. So that's a good guess too. But all right, let's move on. The next name is one of the two big names that I think everybody knows about. Talks about that is Keandre Lambert-Smith, the wide receiver from Penn State, who had a really good year last year, and he is ranked right now as we speak. It's probably already changed, but the number one available player in the portal. He has already heard from Auburn, Georgia, West Virginia, Texas A&M, and of course, Colorado. Those are the schools that have reached out to Lambert Smith. This will obviously be an immediate impact pickup in my mind, maybe not for like an Ohio State or Oregon as much as other schools, but where do you see a potential landing spot? Let's go to Reed first on this one. This is one of those names you recognize, right?
This is one of them that I recognize. I mean, I think if you're looking to kind of go have immediate impact, especially for a team that gets a lot of views and everything, I think Colorado would be interesting because of who you have there, with your head coach that you have, and you have probably one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, I would argue. So, I mean, if that guy's throwing you the ball, that's probably can help your potential when you're looking to lead the NCAA, just pad some stats and also to have an impact there. If not, I think Auburn's a team that's going to be interesting this year. I think kind of the direction Hugh Freeze has taken that program, I think that's a name that people kind of have been that overlooked now, but I think within the next coming years are going to be a little bit more important. So I wouldn't be surprised if an Auburn commit would happen.
I saw the head nod from Jake down there. You agree? Auburn looking like the play to you?
I think Auburn and Georgia are the two best, I think, fit options for him, as long as he's willing to accept that he's a number 2 or 3 guy for a team, especially in Georgia. But I think he could be a really good 3 option for Carson Beck and company, replacing McConkey. I think Ra Thomas is gone. I think. Don't quote me on that, but I do know that they need to fill out some other Georgia receiving spots. In Auburn, if you want to pair him up with the Coleman kid, the freshman receiver that everybody's talking about, I think that's a good spot. But everybody speculated, does Auburn really go in on transfers this year, or do they save their pockets for next year? But I think those are the 2 best spots for him.
You mentioned fit. JP, what do you think about like an A&M first-year head coach, Elko, over at A&M? Do you think a wide receiver is kind of what they need? And do you think that would be a good move on Lambert Smith's part?
I think he's a depth piece, but A&M wouldn't strike me as much, right? Like, we got to see what Wegman's going to do. We got to see how they're going to run the offense. Elko's been a little more run-heavy most places he's been, so I can't imagine that being the most attractive place. But he's a great gap guy to get you to maybe the next portal or some of those, some time for your recruits and guys that are on campus or will be on campus some time. He's talented, don't get me wrong, and I think he's really good. He was good at Penn State, but maybe he's not loving what they're implementing right now. It just, again, fits and how he's feeling about the whole situation. But I would lean, like Jake said, 2 or 3 on your depth chart.
Did he want to be the number 1 guy and Fleming comes in from Ohio State and he kind of takes that spot? Just something that's
got to be the least of your worries if the Franklin's putting as much emphasis on him, on pushing the ball downfield as they are. I don't know. I feel like you'd be more ready to roll and more equipped within the system to get yourself open in those situations.
A lot of people out there are not super high on Drew Aller throwing the football, so maybe that was a part of the decision, maybe looking for someone that throws the football a little bit more consistently. And Julian Fleming's not really a guy that got a ton of targets at Ohio State, but he's a part of a loaded deck there, so maybe put an asterisk next to it. But let's go to the next player, Jason Zandamela, the USC interior offensive lineman. There's obviously schools out there that could use offensive line help. You have Washington, who loses a ton of players into the portal. They need some offensive line help under Jed Fish. But what are you guys thinking on this? Do you know any schools off the top of your head that you're like, they need offensive line help outside of, like, of course, Colorado is a big one that's losing a bunch of players still, but Oklahoma's not a bad one.
The University of Iowa needs an interior offensive lineman. And
Oklahoma's actually, that's a good pick. That's a good pick. I think he's a former 5-star kid, and this was what I was talking about before, where the SEC can't grab guys in conference. So I think this is a good spot to grab Zandamela for even Oklahoma is a great one that needs offensive line help.
Is JP, you mentioned Iowa need an offensive lineman. Is this a guy that you would like them to pick up or maybe take a look at?
Yeah, this is my favorite name on the board that we have written and talking about today. That's my favorite name on the board. And I think he's a talented individual that is a plug and play immediately kind of guy. And he's young. You get him for 2 years. If he stays there for 2 years before draft eligibility, 100%.
Yeah, and you got a good offensive line, just punch out school there in Iowa. So definitely going to be a spot he may take a look at. All right, to the next one. Justin Ross Simmons, the Colorado State wide receiver. The only time Colorado State really got a lot of media attention is when they played at Colorado, week 3 in that absolute battle of a game. But he's a good player, man. This is another probably a G5 name, maybe a lower power 4 team. Where do you see this fit, Jake, as the a little bit of a Colorado homer, a little bit. Where do you see this fit?
I don't know why he didn't want to stay. They had Holton comes back as their number one option. He was an all honorable mention, all conference guy last year. And like Caliac Manis, or not Caliac Manis, their quarterback, Colorado State's got a weird name like that. But either way, they love to throw the ball. So unless he thinks he's going to be, he's a 3-star transfer prospect right now. So I don't see him going Power 5 unless he wants to be a number one option at another Mountain West school. I like the fit where he was at. I think they're going to throw the ball a ton. So I think he's kind of whatever. He's kind of missing out on some opportunities, but he knows better than I do.
Yeah, that's all we'll go into depth on him. I think nobody has a lot of Colorado State fandom in them, but it's a player to watch out for. He could impact a team that you're playing or maybe your team on the field this coming fall. But the last two names, we're just going to roll through them, except for we do need to mention a little bit more in detail on McLean. But Elijah Herring, the Tennessee linebacker, he led Tennessee in tackles last year. SEC player, obviously he's got to go somewhere outside of it. So this could be a Big 10 edition. This could be a Big 12 edition, but a guy that's probably going to make an immediate impact somewhere. So watch out for that. And then the last one, probably the biggest name just because of the media attention the school gets, but Cormani McLean, the 5-star Colorado defensive back, is in the portal. So he will leave Colorado. And it's a guy that you heard a lot about last year. Deion talked about him maybe not being ready, maybe having some off-field issues last year, just not being ready to play. But where do you see this go? Maybe a little bit more structure, maybe a bigger name program where he should have out of high school. What do you guys think on this? JP, lead us off.
Hey, if he's not ready to go and Deion's saying he's not ready to go, like you're going to find out in film when guys are trying to figure out if he's going to fit into their program, right? Because I think we saw LSU last year get burned by grabbing 5 or 6 DBs and none of them really worked out. Like Denver Harris, remember how big of a name he was into A&M and then got to LSU and it wasn't great for him. If he's not ready to go, like maybe he's probably going to land Power 5 level. I would go ahead and assume that, or Power 4 level. But I would just say caution on who kind of gets in and jumps into that if they're not really ready to take the time and build him and get him where he needs to go through the progress. Because I'm not saying Deion's wrong. Why would Deion lie about that? He's got a 5-star kid on the bench that he thinks could plug and play into an awful defense in a bad defensive backfield. Like he's probably telling the exact truth on this kid. Like he just wasn't ready to go quite yet.
Former 5-star, as we mentioned. So you got to think SEC off the top of your head. Jake, is that kind of what you were thinking?
I don't really know. If you guys ever get a chance during the offseason and watch the Amazon Prime special from Colorado last year, it's really good. If I was a head coach at Colorado, I'd be a little upset for some of the ways they portray some of the kids. And McLean is one of them. Like he's just a guy that came off that he doesn't really pay attention. He's not super serious about just anything. And Deion, like he said, I think he was telling the truth. He was not ready to play. I think a school will definitely reach and grab him and take the chance on him. But I see this, a Denver Harris situation is a perfect example, JP. This is a guy who I don't think has minimal chances to screw up at a school. And they'll just be like, there's the door. See ya. Like they'll take the risk on him, but they won't be afraid to let him go either.
Reese, closing thoughts on this one. You kind of have a little bit of a Colorado following in you. What do you think, McLean? That was obviously a big name when they got him. Dancing video from Deion when he committed. So where do you think he might end up?
Last chance, East Mississippi Community College. Go figure it out.
Dude, that's crazy you said that because that's kind of the story or the vibe I got from Jake's talking about him on the documentary. I haven't gotten the chance to watch it, but that's kind of the occurrence of those players have had where maybe they were so good in high school they didn't really have any responsibilities. They get to college, they're even keel and they kind of got to adjust, and then they're very successful at the end of their college career. So we hope for the best for McLean to see where he ends up, and maybe he'll make an on-field impact. Hopefully it's for one of our teams, not against them. But excited that he will not be on the field against Nebraska this year because he was pretty talented. He had his moments last year. He did play a little bit. He had his moments. But all right, let's move on to the next points. These are names that have transferred 2 times within the same window. Example, Caden Proctor, he's on this list. But let's go through them, and then we'll kind of talk about whether or not this is an issue or maybe what's behind the issue. But Raymond Cortell Jr., the wide receiver from Texas A&M, transferred to Kentucky, back in the portal. Caden Proctor, Alabama, back to Iowa, now back to Alabama. And then Penny Boone is one we already talked about, Toledo to Louisville, back in the portal. And then Tyler Barron, he's not officially in there, but rumored to be. Tennessee to Louisville, now rumored to be back in the portal. And then Ruben, I'm not even going to.
I think it's a Nije.
Nije,
Be careful.
the Houston offensive lineman. Yeah. Unique New York. All right. Houston to Louisville and then back in the portal. So is this an issue? Do they need to make maybe some sort of stipulation or a set flat rule? This is much easier to follow rather than tampering, but is this an issue that you don't like, and how would you solve it? Reese, you said yes, so I'll let you go first.
I think it's dumb. I mean, I was in college once, kids. I know it's tough to make a decision, but when you make a decision, you have to stick with the decision. Like whatever school's got to do, whatever the NCAA's got to do, but if a kid makes a decision to commit, there's got to be something that can keep him there for at least a year. Like, yeah, you go there and maybe it's not what you thought it was or whatever, but it's your word has to mean something at some point. I think when you're growing up as a human being, especially as a man, like your word's got to mean something. I don't know what kind of stipulation you can put on these guys, but if you're committing to a coach and to a fan base and to other kids in that program as well, like you're committing to them, but then you get there and you're like, never mind, I don't want to. Like, tough shit, guys. Like, you're gonna do things in life you don't always want to do sometimes. I think you just got to find a way to stick with it, man.
That was a little bit of military talk. That's man talk right there. Let's go to JP on this one because he got to experience it firsthand. We obviously had the Proctor live show the night that it happened, but perfect example is maybe there's some NIL stuff that they can take advantage of. And what do you think on this, JP? How do you change it?
Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, well, Jake,
I was just going to chime in, fellas.
you're
I'm
up.
sorry. I got to get bouncing here. My only thought is I think you should there shouldn't be that many rules. I think you should be able to transfer whatever until they get a rule on it, but you should only be able to transfer in one window. You shouldn't be able to transfer within 2 months. It can't be good for the kid. It's not good for the kid, for the team. Second off, they say coaches can leave all the time. Yes, that's true. But do coaches leave for 2 teams in a year? No, they don't. So this is at least this has got to be regulated, or it's just a big issue. And I think something's going on at Louisville right now. That's all I got to say. I'm going to end on that. So appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for jumping off, leaving us for basketballs. Yeah, so play safe out there, Jake. But all right, let's go back to JP on this. Kind of talking on the Proctor thing. What do you think on this? What's the fix?
The fix. Oh man, I'd be a millionaire.
Question.
If I knew the fix. But I do agree that like the kids get screwed here too. Like they have to know that they are putting themselves in a bind to transfer twice. You're learning 2 playbooks. You assumed, right? Like you're going to go to new school, try to learn that playbook, go through the spring, and then you're going to leave after. You're going to have to learn a new playbook. You just bury yourself on the depth chart unless you're like a Proctor, like you're a high level guy, and you're a plug and place into any system kind of guy. But for the majority of these kids, it kind of hurts them. It messes with academics just in case they don't go play in the NFL. Even if they do, you probably want that degree and you probably want to have ease of transferring and dealing with all the transcripts and whatnot. But it's a little ridiculous to get 2 in one window or 2 in back-to-back windows. The fix, man, like 1 a calendar year maybe, or like you're locked in for X amount of time. Like your scholarship's not binding, but maybe it's going to have to be if you're getting NIL money on the side, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where maybe the NCAA can just handle it based on their approvals because they've denied players before. We've seen it before. They try and go back, re-enter their name or whatever, deny it, make them stay, make them participate. But then you kind of put them in a bad spot by trying to put their name back there in the first place. So there's a lot of different situations, and it's a tough situation for the NCAA again to put stipulations on this, but we have to avoid it. It's very bad for the sport.
And they're probably worried about it. Like they got blowback on the Tez Walker transfer and they kind of blocked him. They got blowback on it when they told kids there's only a 2-time transfer rule, and they got in trouble. Like they're probably just like, what do you want us to do? You wanted free reign. Here you go. Here's the absolute worst of it. And we're seeing it.
Yeah, we absolutely are. But all right, let's go to the teams. Let's go look at the team focus. The team we mentioned earlier, Georgia State's on this list, but this is the number of players that have officially hit the portal from said teams and who leads in those categories with having the most names leave their school. Georgia State's at number 1. They have 14 kids actively in the portal right now, already departed. Colorado's in second. They may be coming, but these dudes are leaving. There's 11 dudes in the portal right now. Probably going to see some additions and more departures. Miami has 4 in there, and Arkansas has 4 in there now. And since we put this on the stat sheet, there's probably a change or more from these schools have
Yep.
been added to this. So do you guys see maybe a trend here? Maybe Colorado and Miami. I mean, there's not really a trend. It's kind of random, but maybe the coaching staff booting them. What do you think on these teams, JP? Anybody that stands out or shocked you that there's kids transferring away from it?
I think Georgia State one, you just have a coach leave. You have a situation where kids maybe don't want to deal with the transition. They want to pick who they play for next. Colorado, I don't know how Deion's going to keep doing this forever in every single transfer window that has ever opened up. And like for the next, 5-6 years, that's his plan, is just we're going to lose, 10 to 15. We'll bring in 10 to 15, 20. Like you got to build through high school recruiting. I really do think that's the truth. And first couple of years, probably the portal is the way to go, and then just build. And as your recruits get older, you'll get better and better at high school recruiting. But that's where you got to start things. And it's Arkansas. We've known, like, this isn't just the first time this has happened. I think in the first window, Arkansas had some movement in some big ways, if you remember. And so it's like, I don't know, kind of what do you say if you're on that team still and you're seeing all of that many guys leave? Like, you're really committing to something and you got to really believe in it, right? Like, because it comes contagious, I assume.
Yeah, 100%. And you got to look at, here's a perfect example, and it's in another sport, college football show, but we got to mention college basketball. Coach Calipari gets hired at a new school. He goes down to Arkansas and he says, I went to talk to the team, and there is no team. So a lot of these kids are just departing, and they might not be following their coach, but they're just following suit. Like, this guy's leaving. Hell, I might as well leave too. So that's the trend we're seeing. Reese, going back to Colorado, JP kind of touched on it a little bit. It's a culture thing, right? Like, it's hard to build a culture and consistency within a program where these kids are in and out all the time and these relationships. So what do you kind of think is the move there? Or do you think Deion just rides this wave forever and hopes to find success in it?
Yeah, it's tough to speak on, like, not being in the room or being a part of that fan base. But
Yeah,
it's
you just don't
almost,
watch enough videos. You can be a
yeah, I'm
part
sure you watch it, but I like 24/7 being in that shit, you know what I'm saying? But
of it. Fair
like,
enough.
fully immersing yourself in the culture, like if the coach is okay with having guys leave and it's bringing in whoever to replace them, I think it's a tough message to send to your guys, because I know the dude cares about his players and loves his players, but when you have that many leaving like that, I don't know if it's the culture, like we just watched that video where he's kind of talking down about some of the players who go to class but don't really pay attention. Like, maybe that rubs guys the wrong way. But then I think he also is sending a message about like how to teach youngs to be adults. So I don't know. It's just tough because like I said, if you're emerging that culture of, hey, guys are just coming and going as freely as they want, there doesn't seem to be too much commitment to the program and to each other, then it's tough to teach that, I think, because if you're just letting guys come in and out, you're not showing commitment and you're not showing that as much care too. Because you guys also want to talk about, like, we talk about Louisville, who brought in how many guys last year, and they have guys jumping in the portal too, where it's not just Colorado. Like, there's multiple schools that have this issue, but it's just fully immersing yourselves in that culture. What are we really about?
Not to cut you off, Reese, but we did just get on Shiloh Sanders' Instagram story at this very moment, a picture of the Colorado Buffalo logo. Defensive transfers, DM me. Offensive transfers, DM Shedeur Sanders. This is not last chance you, it says. That's on his Instagram story as we talk.
That is crazy.
Yeah, that's different, man. That's different. I don't know about that.
Here's the problem, and I actually
Is that legal though? Because he's not a coach.
Let me preface this because I'm a Deion hater just because of the rivalry, but I do enjoy watching those videos. I think he sends across a great message to the kids, and something that I would want to even see from Matt Rule. Like, he wants them in class, paying attention, like just doing the work. But he also kind of sends mixed messages to me where he gets these recruits on campus, and he's got 3 Lambos out there. He wants them to come to his $5 million home. Like, those kids are there thinking they're here to play football, make it to the National Football League. And he doesn't really send the message of, this is a college first. You got shit to do. And if it goes and gets tough, you got to work your way through it. No, if it goes and gets tough, he says, hit the door. See ya.
I got to promise, I would not want to be DMing Shiloh Sanders to get a spot on if I'm picking a new school. I don't want to go through a player. I want the coaches to talk to me. I want to feel wanted at this place.
The guy.
Like, not the guy for multiple reasons. He's not a coach. He's not great. I don't even think he's a captain. Like,
be careful.
What is he doing? He's just like,
Sanders isn't great. If you say Sanders isn't great, you're just a hater. That's it. You can't just be telling factually what he shows you on the field.
Shedeur is talented.
Player.
Shiloh is not great. And to be like, if he's filtering, what if he's filtering names and he's just like, actually, I don't want that's the guy you put on the front lines to filter your talent to come in and out of Colorado. Come on, guys. I
Yeah.
don't think that's happening, but like it obviously is in some ways. And if these guys are DMing Shiloh Sanders, I can't imagine that they're the high level recruits that Colorado needs to get better.
Are we gonna? Can we throw a?
Who should DM him? Which one of us should DM him?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's make Jake do it. He can sell his profile the best, I think.
I got a sick
JP, you could do
highlight.
it.
I got six
Yeah,
sketches.
Both of you should send huddle highlights and be like, "Hey, man,
Sick.
we've got
Second
COVID
overall
eligibility.
district.
'Cause we do."
District 8, 2A, Iowa, 2017.
Say applying to be a scout team wide receiver. I will be there. But also a little rivalry chirp I thought of is what happens if they DM, like let's say a big time player who DMs and says, "Hey, I want to come here." But what happens if they're on the runway? Do they answer the DM? Like, what if they're missing practice? They're on the runway. They're doing another fashion show. Yeah,
book tours.
I
got it all.
Football,
Those guys are in a whole.
It's something they've always wanted, though. Football's not top priority.
Yeah, it's such a weird dynamic over there. But I really do like Dion. Like, I think he sends the right message as a coach. I think he would be the most elite recruiting coordinator, like the director of player personnel out of any school in the country. Like that's his spot. But we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll prove me wrong and shut me up again in person here this coming September. So they'll have their opportunity. But all right, let's go to the last point. We'll probably try and be quick with it. We're already almost at an hour here. But this is navigating the portal. JP, you raised the question as a fan. How do you approach it? So I'll let you answer it first. How do you approach the portal as an Iowa football fan or maybe just a football fan in general?
If you're going fan perspective, just don't be surprised by too much, right? Like you're going to get some insight before things happen for the most part. Never too high, never too low, I think is where you got to be. Like if a kid leaves, don't get too low. If you bring in a kid that has high praise, like don't get too high on it because you don't know if it'll pan out. Like, and he might leave. He might leave before he even takes a snap.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is you may be a little seasoned now.
Yeah,
like,
I think you just want to stay level and just take it for what it is. Just see if you can create depth and you can fill in some holes maybe that you need, but don't get too high, don't get too low. One kid's not going to make or break a season, and it's tough, and you just kind of have to take it for what it is, and it's going to get ugly, and some schools are going to get skinned alive and just lose a lot of kids, and others are going to have the greatest portal class of all time, and it's not going to turn out. So like it's just part of it. I think that's kind of where we are, is just stay level. Do not get too high. Don't go to social media every time a kid leaves, or don't go to social media every time a kid commits because you don't know really what the end result is.
And whether or not he got a boot out the door. I mean, some of these kids, I don't think we get the full story that they maybe said, "Hey, it might be in your best interest because you're not going to play very much." So,
or it's like,
I agree.
And also, like the kid might say he's entering the transfer portal. Well, that kid can come back, and if you just let loose, like like stay on that same level. You let loose on this kid. Said he entered the portal, but he really just wanted to kind of see what was out there. But he's found he's at the right place, and he comes back. No, you already tweeted a paragraph long thing about how he wasn't a fit, and he wasn't good. But he was all Big 12 last year for you, but he left, so you got upset. Like these kids can come back too.
Right, Reese, what do you got on this?
As a quote to live your life by football fans. You can't control what happens to you in life, but you can control how you respond to what happens to you in life. Don't go on Twitter and say a bunch of stupid stuff that's just out there forever. You can be upset. Yeah, you can be upset. Just don't be a moron about it.
That's fair enough. We're getting deep. I like that message. I could honestly tell myself that after we lose football games because I let the explicitives fly. That's a fact. So I like that.
Just give us a 30-minute window. 30-minute window of chill.
Yeah,
and then
you're fine.
We can deal with it.
Right there.
Unfortunately, we didn't get to ask Jake this, and I'll lead it off because we kind of talked about Iowa a few times tonight, but how are our teams faring so far when it comes to transfers in and transfers out? Nebraska had a couple names jump in today, not big names. Corey Callier, who jumped in from Florida last year, played in 5 games, didn't make a huge impact on the defensive side of the ball. He departed. But like Rule said, you got a little clip of it. He doesn't expect most of them to jump in the portal, and really, no, not a ton of them did in the first window. I mean, they're here to stay. They either graduated or they're here to stay. So I like the direction we're headed in, and we did make the additions we needed. I think we needed wide receiver help. We got Jamal Banks, who caught 59 passes last year at Wake Forest, one of the better receivers in the ACC. And you made Isaiah Nayor from Texas originally, goes to Wyoming. He'll be really good. He's supposed to be really good, and they're top-tier athletes, so I'm hearing, and having a good spring. So I like where we're at transfer portal-wise for Nebraska. JP, what do you got on the Hawks?
Yeah, I think the only one that's kind of shown up is the Bostic kid, Jacob Bostic, who was like people were kind of high on him to come in to Iowa City, and it just never really turned out. Like he never really built up on the depth chart, never really got a ton of snaps. And I'm assuming that he's either getting A, passed on the depth chart, sees he's not going to play a lot, or it's the old Iowa adage where it's just not a place a receiver wants to be for too long. So that's kind of the only big one. Or I mean, if you want to, I don't know if we call that a big one, but that's the only one really that's going on at the moment. I don't expect a ton to leave. Again, they're veteran. They've been there for a long time. The guys, and I think a lot of people are built into what Ferentz has going on, the culture there, and then as well as like giving this a chance with Lester, right? Like, let's just see what happens. Because to be honest with you, just certain, I think the running back room, if somebody left there, that would be a hit, and receiving room just for depth. But nobody's going to leave on the offensive line because they're not going to play anywhere else. But that's just, it's kind of where I'm at. Hopefully they add some depth pieces, but I don't see it getting too bad.
That was my next question, was kind of leading to the depth, JP. I've heard some rumorings, and maybe it's just the Twitter sphere doing it to us. And we saw a couple of good plays and a couple of really, really bad plays from Lincoln Keyholtz over at Ohio State. South Dakota kid, has some Iowa ties. Do you think that's a possibility you see?
That's a rumor I've heard too. But again, rumors, like capital letters, underlined, bolded.
Twitter made rumors.
And I'm like, where are you? I touched this on my Iowa fan perspective when I first started rumbling. I was like, where are you guys getting your sources? Because you're not getting them from 24/7. You're not getting them from our insiders. You're just like hearing stuff and like see there's a like if it happens, he jumps in and then Iowa contacts him. Awesome, great, wonderful. But like, let's not act like insiders here because I don't have the kid's phone number and I don't know his family like some people on Twitter claim to. So, but that would be a good piece. But he probably would be a depth piece at this point.
Yeah,
I think Ferentz would take that long to. You know,
that would be my question.
Everybody in fall camp.
That's what I was thinking too. I mean, you got Deacon Hill taking first team reps the other day with McNamara down, but you got to think McNamara is the guy. And is Keyholtz really going to transfer to an in-conference school where he's going to be a backup? Like, is he not going to be there with Devin Brown doing the same thing at Ohio State and have a better possibility of Will Howard messing up and getting the boot right away? So I don't know. That's a good one, but it's definitely a name to watch out for the Hawks. Reese, Syracuse, first-year head coach. I'll just let you talk on it quickly. You want transfers in? I mean, I know you got some transfers out when the old head coach departed. Stefan Thompson came to Nebraska. That's a name I failed to mention. He's going to be a stud, but is there anything you kind of want from Syracuse when it comes to transfer?
I don't know. I mean, we just had I forget his first name. It's like Mufwak. It's something weird, but his last name is Parkman. But he's running back who just hit the portal. But I mean, you did bring in 2 wide receivers from Georgia. You brought in Kyle McCord. So I think they're kind of going to rely more on that pass game. I think we'll see what Fran Brown can scheme up with that. But then defensively, they lost a lot of dudes. Like they lost to, I think, a lineman to Arizona. They lost the linebacker you just mentioned. They also just brought in Fadil Diggs. So, I mean, bringing in extra guys couldn't hurt. I think Syracuse is a program where they're not obviously loaded with talent. So if Fran Brown and his crew can find a way to, I don't know, pick off onesies and twosies from other schools where the guys weren't happy being number 2 or number 3 or number 4 or whatever it is, they could come to Syracuse and probably have an opening impact. So,
yeah, I kind of think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, with guys like that, with McCord, Georgia transfers, you got to think Syracuse can find some success within the ACC and be at the top to middle at the bottom, middle at the lowest, and top of that conference pretty consistently over there year over year. But new first year coach, so it'll probably change.
Spring game, but Saturday 7:00, going to be there. Let's go Orange.
Yep. Spring game. Nebraska spring game's not till next weekend. It's late. So JP wins Iowa. Is it this weekend or the weekend following?
If you want to call it a spring game, it's an open practice with some drills at the end. It's this weekend at like 10 a.m. I think. It's not.
It's not usually a big event there. They don't do like a full game. They do more drill based, right?
It's all drill based. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking from the past. But Nebraska is in 2 weeks. Syracuse this week. Iowa open practice this week, so we get to watch a little bit of football. We kind of took away some, and I'm sure we'll share that next week. Spring game takeaways if we've gotten to see. But that's pretty much it. That's tonight's episode. If you have any questions, comments, drop them in late. We'll address them next week, but we appreciate you being here. We got to talk about a lot of players in the portal. I'm sure we'll have midweek updates, funny memes, videos on the page throughout the week. Follow us on all platforms at Play the Fight Pod. Closing thoughts, JP? You had anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
Ready to roll.
I thought yeah. Play the Fight Pod. Follow us on all platforms. Hit the subscribe button. If you haven't
comment,
before,
subscribe.
Do all those things. Let's go. Reese, you want to take us away?
Absolutely, I do.
All right. Do
Play
it.